Oh, yeah.
Anyway, I apologize if I yawned tonight because I just got in last night
That's
from
right.
Scotland, so I'm a little jet
Oh,
lagged.
I want to hear all about it.
Oh, amazing.
Yeah,
Absolutely amazing.
good.
And again, we had great weather. There was like one short passing shower the entire week we were
Wow.
there. Amazing.
That is amazing. Someone else just told me that too. Oh, Bo.
Oh, yeah. I was gonna say the Morgantinis were in Ireland and they said they had hardly any rain.
All right, good to go. Dina, it's ready. Everybody's out of the waiting room and we're gonna hit record.
Recording in progress.
So did everyone have a chance to look at the minutes from the last meeting? And did anyone have any changes?
Make a motion to approve the minutes as presented.
I'll
Okay.
second that.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Do we have any public comment?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
Hi, I'm Cliff McKinney,
Mhm.
and I live at 5145 Vermont Route 30, and which is just south of 315 as you come into Dorset from the north.
Mhm.
Okay. Yeah.
And I joined the meeting about 6 months ago to voice my concern about speeding on Route 30.
Right.
And I'm back. I'm sorry I haven't been back since. I've tried to, but I've missed the meetings because the situation hasn't gotten any better. In fact, it's getting worse, and it's quite frankly out of control. I feel like it's especially during the morning and evening rush hours. So between 5:30 in the morning and say 8:30 and 4 p.m. to 7 p.m. The traffic coming south in the morning and going north, basically to and from New York, I believe, with commuters and the trucks. I mean, it's a danger to pets, to wildlife, to children, to our quality of life in the town that we love. And it's just, I think something has to be done about it. Not to mention the damage to property value. The logging trucks that go by at 60 miles per hour make our house shake, make our neighbor's house shake. I don't know what it's doing to the foundations of our buildings. And I'm hoping that there's something that can be done aggressively, because I've seen other towns that have very polite but strongly worded signage as you enter the town. Basically, it's zero tolerance. You abide by the speed limit, please, but welcome to our community, but respect our community. I hope there could be more speed control, monitoring, and ticketing, especially during those rush hours, so that those people see other people getting ticketed, so that they pay attention and they slow down. Because when people go by at the speed limit, it's not an issue. It's just normal. But when they go 20, 25 miles per hour over the speed limit, and I'm not just talking about my little part of Route 30, but the entire stretch through Dorset. I pull out of my driveway to go south on 30, and I can see people in the rearview mirror fly up behind me, and then they get irritated that I'm going the speed limit. And I'm sorry, but in our town, I'm going our speed limit. And I just wish that we could do something aggressively along the entire route, whether it's strong signs like that, more of the electronic signs that tell people how fast they're going over the speed limit. So I know I notice that when I drive into another town, if I'm going a few miles over the speed limit, I slow down. It catches my attention. It makes me think. It's like, hey, this is somebody's community. I'm going to slow down. So I hope there's something we can do. And however I can help, whether it's petitioning everybody that lives in the entire along Route 30, or serving on a committee, or however I can help, I really want to do something to improve the quality of our life in the town by slowing these people down who don't live there. They're passing through, and they're abusing our livelihood.
Mhm. Rob, do you know, I think when we last spoke, we were gonna try and move one of the signs over there. And how many has Justin been targeting that particular area? I know you gave us that whole sheet right now. I think it was at the last meeting or the meeting before, that said sort of all the different places where he's pulled people over.
Yeah, I think the increased patrols have been mostly on Route 7 and Route 30.
But up
I'd
north in that section, or has it been south of that? I mean, I
have to
know
go
I
look at
see
the
them
logs.
south, but
I'll have to look at the logs. I mean, it's, from the town line to the town line, essentially, is
I know.
what gets patrolled.
I know.
But it doesn't seem to be having an effect, for whatever they're doing or what, and I haven't seen him out. He might be patrolling during those hours, but I haven't noticed it. So if we could also petition the state to lower the speed limit from 40 to 30. I know it was lowered from 50 to 40 just a couple years ago, and that was a very difficult thing to do. But if you want them to go 40, I think you got to post the speed at 30, to be quite honest. And again, signs as they come into town to just kind of knock them over the head, like, hey, you're in a community now. Please slow down and respect the people that live here and respect our neighborhood.
Mhm.
Is that something that can be done where the town can authorize those signs or install them?
No,
As well as additional electric, because the mobile electric sign was installed after the last meeting that I attended, and it was up for a few days, and it had some effect, but then it went away, and then of course the effect went away as well.
Yep, we can look to get the trailer there and the sheriff there in the short term, and then the longer term, we can look at signage. So the state of Vermont, it's their roads, so they have to approve any signage, as well as the like radar signs and stuff like that. So, but it's doable.
Have
Great.
there are a number of radar signs around the area. Have those been shown to have an impact? The ones that are, permanent, that are low down, please?
Yeah, they do. Yep. Yep. And
I
it's,
think it's also, it is worth noting, because I live in that neighborhood as well. There's a business, there's a school, there are factors that have
yeah.
trucks and animals and business happening early in the day, and it's just, there's potential for a lot of public safety hazard because people just fly.
Well, and particularly like the logging trucks and things like that.
Yep.
Well, and I think that's what helped bolster it when we got it moved down
Yep.
to 40.
Yep.
Yeah, you're very unlikely to get the speed limit lowered any lower than what it is, just based on the state's process. But that doesn't mean that we can't look at signs and some other things.
Do you know, does Justin ever, and you're not gonna know off the top of your head, but when it comes to things like the logging trucks, like very often I see cars pulled over. I've never seen a logging truck. I don't even know if you'd be able to catch one. I mean, does he ever ticket trucks like that, big trucks?
I don't, in my experience, those trucks aren't going as fast as what people think they are. They're just really big and noisy. And there's and the volume of traffic on Route 30 is increased
Volume of traffic.
a lot,
is
probably in the
certainly
last,
increased,
5 to 10 years. It's increased by something like 30% or so. I think it's a lot. So I think, there's a little bit of all this stuff at play, but we can definitely, we can see if we can move that, the northern, electronic sign that's in the village. We can see if we can move that north, at least in the interim.
And that one's the temporary one, or is that the one that's?
It's a permanent, it'll
It is
go on a telephone pole, we'll have to find a utility pole.
The couple in Manchester on, Manchester West Road
Yeah.
and going in, those, it does seem to get people's
Yeah.
attention.
Yeah, on 7A when you're coming in there,
Exactly, yep.
I think it makes a big difference.
Is it possible to add more of them? Because I think the ones that are in near the Dorset Field Club, those are important to keep them there as well. But could you have one right when you come into Dorset, right past 315 where you make the left bend? There's a big tree there. There's a sign that says speed limit's 40, but if you had something that really caught their eye right there, I think that would kind of just shock them to, people just don't realize they're just cruising down from Paulet, and they just are in cruise control.
Yeah, it's a little, we can definitely
When you
try
have a
that.
change in the speed, you know, the change in the speed limit seems like a good place to
Mhm.
kind of, when the speed
To
limit
put the
drops
sign up.
down, then it's just an extra kick 'em in the teeth with.
Mhm.
Yep,
So we have to get the state's permission to put up a permanent,
the two that we have right now don't have.
oh,
Permission.
Yeah.
Okay,
They- I
but
just-
nobody said anything.
Oh, they did, and I just said tough noogies, and they haven't made us move them yet, so.
Okay,
I think if we put up more, we're gonna start to push the envelope, but I
Well,
mean,
we
there's
might be able to
short-term,
put up
long-term
one
stuff.
more, yeah.
Yeah, there's short-term, long-term stuff. I mean, I think, definitely the spot that, Cliff was talking about is probably a good,
a good
Mhm.
spot.
because and it's also one that the state would probably say.
And the
no-
ones that,
no
you know, like
to.
say warning or something like that on them, that
They're
seems
not
to,
supposed to. So on the state road, when the state finally gives their permission, it's just supposed to cycle, the speed, and it's not supposed to have any lettering and no flashing and stuff like that, so. Yeah, it's just that's the rules. So we're
Right,
kind
no
of,
messages or anything like that. The
Yeah.
one we have out here on 7A doesn't have any messages, right? It just flashes
it's
the
just a,
speed.
yeah, kind of
Yeah.
old school.
Yeah.
Just, speed reader.
Yeah, and I think it's
Still
effective as
works,
well,
yeah.
because we had one put in, Cliff, on 7A, and that was another spot where you're coming up on 7
It's-
and you're coming from, you know,
Very
people
similar.
traveling like 60, and then all of a sudden they're in the little town and they don't recognize it, and that has made a difference.
Similar to Route 30.
So if we could, I mean, for now, we could move that, but maybe we could just buy a third and put it up there.
While you're doing it, if you bought a fourth one coming the opposite way, just a bit close to Liz's house coming towards me, that'd be great too. But I would take the third one, would be fantastic. So
I will say that they're $3,500 and everybody in every street wants one, so.
Yeah.
Mhm.
so it should be coming from town. It, you know, you're in a lower speed zone.
Right.
And so it's kind of a different dynamic, but
Yep.
I would think that people would be,
they're not.
They're
They're not.
ramping up to go fast
Yep.
in that area.
Yeah.
So that's-
Well, and you know, there's
when they're
that
leaving, they're
sort of historical knowledge of
south. the
thinking
south
that it was
line.
faster. I mean, I have trouble when I'm going down to Manchester because I'm just so used to it being 50 and I have to keep
Right.
reminding myself, it's
It's
40, it's
40.
40. And the other thing
but
is,
that's where those signs actually
right, they
catch your
help,
attention, you know,
Mhm.
it's like,
because then it reminds you.
I mean, this is just everywhere, just like Bennington, just approving some traffic calming steps.
Right, I know, I just saw that. I mean, even Dorset West Road, we just have so many more cars on it,
Yeah.
and same thing. At the 2 rush hours, they're really fast.
I've noticed, because the backside of our property, we can see the Dorset West Road. And I've noticed a lot of Amazon trucks going there, taking a shortcut, I think. Which that's another thing that I think we should put an end to, because I don't think large commercial 18-wheelers should be going down the Dorset West Road. But they're clearly cutting around for whatever reason, to bypass 30 and to take a shortcut.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, there's a regional Amazon distribution center in Granville now.
Oh, is
There
there?
is?
Yeah,
You know,
that's why all the old Manchester Wood site,
All right, well, we're going to start by,
I'll order another sign.
ordering a radar sign that will go up there, and we can just see how that is, work with Justin to try and increase
controls,
Right.
in that particular area. And just see if that makes an impact.
Very good.
Because there's so much speeding all around the town, we sort of, you go work on one section and then everybody starts speeding in the other section, and then you move it over there, and it's just like,
It's whack-a-mole.
yeah, exactly. If we had our own full police department, we could have people out there all the time. Anyway, but we will be working on it, Cliff.
Great. Thank you very much. I very much appreciate it.
All right, so, is there any other public comment? Okay. Then we can move on to, Sean Osborne, who has been recommended by the zoning board of adjusters. Who is he replacing?
Oh, this is a vacant.
Dave
spot.
Wilson.
Yeah,
Yes.
been vacant for a while.
Yep.
Sean is here on
Oh,
Zoom.
there
Hey,
he is.
Sean.
Hi, everybody.
Hi, Sean.
Hey, Sean.
Y'all can hear me okay?
Yep.
Yep.
Sean is interviewed with the zoning board for the position, and they have voted to nominate him to then come before the board to interview and ultimately for appointment if the board so chooses. So, this is where the board can ask a few questions and have some back and forth and then vote on the appointment.
I think the board was unanimous, right?
The zoning board votes, yes.
Mhm. So Sean, have you been on a similar type organization before?
I currently sit on the board of the Southwestern Vermont Chamber of Commerce. I also sit on the board of the Maple Hill Cemetery.
Okay.
Is this a particular interest of yours, or you just got asked, so
Recruited.
you're filling the,
I would
Taking
say the latter. I'm happy to help where I can.
I move, we appoint Sean
I'll
to the
second
vacant
that.
seat.
Okay.
We're a tough group.
All in favor,
Jim seconded.
say aye.
Aye.
Aye. We take your recruitment and the recommendation of the zoning board of adjusters to heart.
And we appreciate your
Yeah,
willingness to step up.
appreciate you stepping up.
Thank you.
Great. Well, thank you all.
Okay, thanks, Sean.
Thanks, Sean.
Bye, Sean.
Hey, Tyler, you were in the waiting room, but they just approved Sean's appointment to the ZBA. FYI. Move on.
Okay. The next pay requisition, Naylor and Breen.
So, pay rec number 4 is in the packet, a little bit more than last month. You can see, let's see, total percentage number down at the bottom, I think is around a quarter of the way done.
23.7.
Yeah, which is pretty indicative. I printed some pictures of the progress. I think they're in the copier. I'll grab them later. You guys can take a look if you want. So yeah, so it's just another month's billing, pay Naylor Breen, keep things moving along.
Yep. It's all looking good. I was up there about 10 days ago. It's probably already changed since then.
Yep,
But,
yeah, timbers went in last week.
Yeah.
Craig said the trusses were delayed, or some trusses.
They were, but he told me today they're supposed to be here Thursday.
Oh, okay.
So they were really hoping to not, have the timbers get snowed on, but I think it's, they're supposed to be here Thursday. I think they'll start some of it Friday and then Monday. So we'll see what, but it's, once the trusses are there, then they can get the roof on and get it closed in pretty quick. So, yeah, they're pretty anxious, I think, to get it,
Yep, sealed up.
sealed up.
Bet they are.
It's almost December.
Yeah.
So,
I know, hard to imagine.
yeah, the weather we've actually had a really nice.
Yeah, because we really haven't had much of a frost at all. I mean. Okay,
I move we approve the pay requisition as presented.
Second that.
all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay. So you were sort of just giving us the town office
Yep.
construction update. They go hand in hand with the pay requisition.
Yep.
So I saw what Jim wrote with the option tax.
Yeah, so we had, if you remember at the last meeting, a discussion about local option stuff. There were some questions about the process and then kind of the use of funds and stuff like that. And Jim's basically outlining a process to where you can you could warn it, approve it, and then, create, I think what do you call it, a sinking fund?
Reserve fund or
Yeah.
something out.
Like a reserve fund or a sinking fund,
Mhm.
and then it allows the board to then, utilize those resources for said sinking fund. Mainly and that's in the decision-making process at town meeting, that you're not able to, I guess with revenues, you can't earmark them for certain things because you
Right.
kind of
It changes each year, you're supposed to.
changes
do it.
each year, and
Yep.
you're restricting future use
Mhm.
of those resources.
Yep.
So it doesn't mean you can't do it, just kind of some specifics to the process.
Mhm.
So that I thought was good and useful for the board and the discussion in the process.
Mhm. So one question I have in terms of putting together some sort of sinking fund or an option tax that's designated for housing is at a certain point in time when you're done, like, let's just say, okay, we've got this housing project and over so many years it's finalized. You're still gonna have that option tax. But what if you want to then redesignate it? Like if you designated the thing, because here he said, you could do it, a reserve fund specifically for housing. But you should be able to have the ability to then
I think
change that, so it just
the,
doesn't go on
if you
forever.
go back down to the next, this is also if the town is considering, bonding or borrowing.
Right.
You can create a sinking fund.
Mhm.
And then the sinking fund, it's really kind of up to, you'd have a set amount of revenues for the local option tax, and that just kind of goes in, and you could use that for different stuff at different times.
Mhm.
You could put it into a sinking fund.
Because when the voters approve it, they're
Have
not
a-
approving it for a specific.
No, you're gonna, I mean, in the discussion,
You
you're
would
gonna
have to
tell them
describe.
kind of what your intent is, right?
Right.
And this is what you're planning on doing, but yeah.
But
it would-
but in the.
it's gonna
in the
be-
the article isn't gonna say anything
Correct.
about purpose. so-
Yeah, correct. It's gonna say, shall the voters approve a local
Mhm.
option tax for the town of Dorset? And then there would be a whole bunch of background to it in terms of like, right now what the thinking is.
Mhm.
But yeah, it doesn't mean that it couldn't
Mhm.
be, if it was for 10 years, put into a fund, and utilized for that purpose. And, it all depends on, kind of how you present it and what you want to do.
Mhm.
If you're gonna have long-term debt, then you would think that it would, if it's earmarked specifically for that, and one kind of neutralizes the other, then you would, if you deviate from that, then you're gonna have to, come up with another revenue source for that debt service.
Well, from what, maybe I don't know whether I'm reading it right or not, but it sounds kind of like you've got to, that you create that flow and then every year you have to take the action to
Correct.
direct the
Right.
money.
Yeah,
Mhm.
correct.
So it's, so if we borrowed to do, do work on the property, then it would go the sinking fund route. If we
Mhm.
didn't, then we could
Mhm.
flow directly into there, but every year, so when we no longer have a sinking fund need,
Then you could repurpose it for something
Mhm.
else, if you had other
but
needs.
that's gonna be, I assume, an article every year that, that it's on the warning that, we're proposing that those funds go to whatever purpose.
Either a separate article or it's just a, board policy that gets
Okay.
set.
Yeah.
Where the board does it.
Right.
Okay,
A good analogy is like we have it's kind of implied, but we have a reserve fund, line item in like the highway department stuff. And we don't vote specifically to transfer that stuff to a fund, but that's functionally what happens is that
Mhm.
we have a number that's set in the line item that isn't for a specific project, it's for a ongoing commitment to projects, and that number is kind of forecasted based on what the need is. And then the board then shifts it over to the reserve fund,
Mhm.
just as part of an accounting process.
Mhm.
One of the questions that I had was, there was some note here that maybe it was the Department of Taxes could only issue a certain number of these per year. That was
there was no legislative requirement, but that the Department of Taxes,
But it does
Is it
say
in the
up front
statute?
that we're one of the 76 Vermont municipalities.
Right,
that
like
have-
we
were one
already
of the-
have.
We were one of the original towns, but I
Yeah.
believe that there was legislation that was either offered or voted on this year that makes this possible for all municipalities.
Yep,
in
That,
Vermont.
yeah, it says the 2024
Yeah.
amendments. So all municipalities
Yeah.
are now, are allowed to impose.
what did I read?
It does say
Oh,
the
oh,
Commissioner
right,
of
it
Taxes
says-
has been given the authority to limit the number of municipalities enacting a local option tax to 5 per calendar
Right,
year.
yeah.
Yeah.
So do we know, I mean, do they ever get near that? I'm assuming they don't even get near that.
Well,
I don't
there-
know.
A total of 32 municipalities have implemented the
Right,
tax.
Right,
So,
And
so
a lot of them,
and that's been for 20 years,
Yeah.
since 2000, 24 years.
yeah.
yeah, longer than that, yeah, 99.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
so-
would say
so
it's
probably not
probably
an
less
issue.
than 5,
Yeah.
but I don't know. Yeah. And I think that the original ones that are able to, I don't know,
Yeah.
I thought they had some leg up in the process of approving it, in terms of, being in line first.
Okay.
So I didn't,
Also, the authority to limit it to 5, but that doesn't mean that they
They
will,
have
and
to.
they will, yeah.
Says
and
that of
they-
the 76 that were originally kind of deeded the opportunity, only 16 have taken advantage of it. There's an interesting thing on the Vermont League of Cities and Towns website about this. It was some testimony that Ted Brady gave
yeah.
regarding
'cause-
local option tax to the House Ways and Means Committee, and the point that he was making was that this is actually, it's good for everyone. And it's not doing anything other than just allowing municipalities to do some things through a tax structure that wouldn't already be available to them through the state.
Yeah, and I think.
But I think that this Act 69 was letting all towns
Mhm.
be able to take advantage of it.
Because it was something that was already previously approved by the
Mhm.
legislature,
Mhm.
that's kind of that's starting a sort of process by which towns are able to do that. Because previous, it would have to create a charter and the legislature would approve the charter. Or you do a charter change to add it. And it was kind of at the whim of the legislature as to whether or not it would get done. And sometimes it would sit up there for a couple of years before it would actually get done. So the communities would vote on it, pass it, and then the legislature could potentially
Delay it.
okay it, or they couldn't,
Mhm.
for no good reason sometimes.
Yep.
Other than, either politics or, negligence, I don't know, whatever the word you want to use. So, and that process is now changed. So in theory, if you approve it, it's more straightforward.
So is this a floor vote or is this Australian ballot?
I'm pretty sure it would be Australian ballot, but I think it might be up to the board.
Us,
Yeah,
We
but it's a Barlow question.
yeah.
You may ask.
So then the question is, how do we want to do this at a special meeting or do we want to do it at our annual March town meeting?
Yep, I mean, the language is pretty straightforward. You pick one of those things to be suggested, and then obviously there would be some background information that would needed to be crafted and provided.
It does sort of raise the
That's sort of
question
reasoning why.
with the 3 different sources, the sales, the
Yeah.
meals and,
Meals
and
and lodging.
alcohol and lodging. Sort of, I assume you just kind of do it on all of them, but.
Usually do, yeah.
Yeah, I'm assuming most of the other towns do. I'm pretty sure Manchester is.
Manchester does on
Does all
all
3.
but there are some that don't do like one of them.
Yeah, you
sure
might
the
not
reason-
do the sales tax.
I'm not sure the reasoning, other than maybe there was one or two that didn't produce a ton of revenue or whatnot. But usually it's all three.
I mean, it's not, all sounds fine and I can see how it can be a good thing. I would feel like if we're going to do something and the goal is for it to be something housing related, I would feel much better if we had something that we were looking at approving and knew what an amount would look like, rather than just putting a tax down in case we can raise money, in case we can spend it on some housing, just, given the nature of all the taxes that are coming down the pike. To me, it seems to me that we should, like, this is a great option if, when we get through all of this
More
housing,
certainty of the price.
instead of just saying, let's do it in March, it's like, well, first, let's see if we have a project that we need to raise money for, before we would put this to the residents.
Just
I mean,
to-
that's just,
Depending on when the concept study for Raptor Lane is done, you may have a.
But I'm thinking part of that
Something there that
is,
would have a
this would allow us to do the infrastructure work that would allow us to get a project off the ground too, though.
right,
Well,
but
that's
we're
the
not,
point of it,
right,
So we wouldn't we'd have something we could define to the public. This is what we're intending to do with these funds, but we
Yeah.
wouldn't have
Yeah, but
Yeah.
Megan's point is, I don't think we know what the cost of this
Right.
Right.
infrastructure is gonna be.
right.
right.
Are we
right.
gonna do infrastructure for 50 condos? Are we gonna do it for
Right.
20? Is it gonna be
I mean, I think.
single family homes? I just, it's so vague right now, and there's so many
Presented as something
options.
real.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and even the proposal that's come out, it's like 109 units, and that's, probably not what we would be
Like
doing next.
Manchester's 450.
Or it's like that bike
It's a
path
lot
that we
more
wanted to do to
ground
connect
truth
for
than that.
$14 million. It was 14.
No, I think, so there's an outside chance that the concept study with some of the numbers would line up with, in the next, I would say, month and a half, which potentially could get you in time for town meeting.
So what would be the deadline to decide to do that? January.
January.
Late January? you said?
Yeah, your January select board meeting. would kind of be the
Okay.
deadline.
So let's just see how things
Yeah.
progress and.
Yeah.
But that
that's
doesn't
what
mean
it's
that you
saying.
couldn't have a separate meeting that was solely dedicated to
Right.
that at a different
Right.
time.
Mhm.
When it was appropriate to.
Yeah. I just think right now things are very much up in the air and nothing's decided. It's just been a lot of ideas, some good ideas, don't know who the partners are, don't really have a handle on what we would be doing. And I feel uncomfortable just
Yeah.
going ahead with saying, yes, we're gonna put this
Well, I think-
tax just in case.
I think maybe, what Rob just said, if we had like a special meeting just to present, here's what we've been working on.
And the way
That might
if
be
you have a
good.
special meeting, there's two parts to it. You'd have an informational meeting like a Monday night, and then Tuesday there would be a vote.
Like we did on the bond,
Yeah,
right?
same thing that we do at town meeting.
So, but this could be after town meeting, so we
Could be
could,
whenever.
it could be whenever,
Whenever.
whenever
You
we're
just, there's some-
ready.
There's just a
Yeah.
warning, there's a, whatever, 45-day
Yeah.
warning process.
Be great to do it in the new town.
That's right.
offices,
That's
in
what I
the
was just
new
thinking.
Meeting room.
Yeah, and there's a lot of, the concept study, I can actually touch upon that a little bit. So the housing committee is going to be able to work with, White and Burke, real estate advisors, to kind of, there's a general direction, with the concept study. But what's gonna be valuable with White and Burke is to kind of ground truth some of the, I would say, housing marketplace realities, as to what is outlined in that concept study and the feasibility of it from a real estate advisor developer hat. It's one thing for us because right now we've got a concept study. We've asked engineers to say what's the capacity here. That's very different than what are developers
Right.
looking for, what could this do, what makes sense. So I think it may turn out that what we've outlined is pretty feasible and a pretty good start, which I think we'll probably find that in portions it is, mainly because it's the way it's kind of designed is it could be designed and then built in pods, phases, that it wouldn't all be it's, there's not gonna be one developer that does it all. It's gonna be different partners probably that do
Mhm.
different things, in just different little locations. But that process, is gonna take a little while, probably 6 months, I would imagine. To better understand whether or not that concept study is, is a good door to walk through, or if it should be looked at a little differently. Everything under the sun, from that to, are there other ways to, manage the whole process?
Mhm.
So,
The only advantage to doing it as soon as we can is that we can start collecting money within, what, 3 to 6 months of the vote, and then could start refreshing our sinking fund,
yeah,
Mhm.
which would then, over time, start, this isn't probably gonna get started for a couple of years. And, so we'd have,
Yep.
as much as $300,000 or $400,000, ready to go.
Which I totally understand, but what if we don't do a project, or what if we do something, anticipatory taxes just don't sit well with me.
yeah.
Especially
The flip
now-
side though is.
Yeah. I mean, look what just happened this year. I think people want responsible things where they can see where your money's gonna go, not just some aspirational dream for something that they can't put their hands
Yeah,
around.
but it could fund some of your front end engineering.
Mhm.
And
Yeah,
then
it's true.
the other, to Henry's point, the housing problem, probably not gonna go away anytime soon. I think the work, all the traffic that people are bemoaning on Route 30, exists because in part, in large part to the housing situation that's in our area. So, I think it would take a lot of trust, I think, to say, hey, we are gonna do something. We don't really know what it is yet, but we feel that this resource is gonna do X, Y, or Z.
So here's another question for Mr. Barlow is if we passed it and then the whole thing just falls on its face, can we not implement, not collect?
I don't know. So like
Or is it earmarked for something else?
Well,
now it's a revenue
Yeah.
source that you got, you're gonna
yeah,
have
it's
that
a
money
revenue
come in.
source, but well, I mean, you could obviously just go in the general fund with the way that Manchester does it.
Yeah, so true. That just, to
I'd
me, that
imagine-
just feels like a bait and switch.
One thing,
You'd have to
That's-
rescind it to not collect.
We'd have to rescind it.
I would
Okay.
think so. Yeah.
Well, that
But I
would
can
probably
ask.
be easily done.
so Megan, one thing that the committee is starting to work on in earnest is a lot of the messaging and the kind of the marketing aspect of it. And I do think that as we get closer to a concrete value proposition that obviously will come before the board, but to kind of, that outlines the importance of the issue and the commitment that the town and that we have to coming up with a concrete suite of solutions to it. The issue is framed, and I think to Rob's point, from this next iteration of the study from the engineers, there very well might be a set of costs that are things that the town is planning to do and what it's trying to do to kind of get this site ready for this. So I completely appreciate what you're saying about not wanting to just raise a tax for the sake of raising a tax for something that we don't exactly know what it's gonna look like yet. But at the same time, these are not easy, this is a complex, complicated, expensive proposition. And it's a way to gain some community support to be able to allow it to move along.
No,
That sounds
I
like-
totally get that. I think for me, it's a timing issue. I think
Yeah.
we're,
Yeah, no, and
this
that
is
makes
just
sense.
one piece, just as the study is one piece, and then we can put it together and say, does this make sense? If we now have this proposal and we think this is realistic, and then we have this potential source of revenue, we have to put it together as a package that holds together. I think this idea that we're just coming up with ideas, we don't know if they're gonna work, we don't know who our partners would be, we don't know how big it is. We say, let's just have an anticipatory tax because probably down the road we'll do something. That to me it just doesn't, it doesn't sit right.
It
Even though
might be
you
too
could use the
aggressive
money.
to try to push for town meeting, but 'cause
Yeah.
we can do it at another time
Yeah,
when we have
the-
more
To
detail.
Henry's, point, though, it's the concept study's been delayed a little bit. That's,
Mhm.
it was supposed to be tracking along, like we were supposed to have it,
Right.
midsummer, I
Yep.
think.
Mhm.
So that being slowed down is really, we haven't been able to see some of these other,
Mhm.
kind of next steps that would start to then make you think, okay, well, this is
But
starting to look like a whole puzzle piece.
But I do think if we were to try to get it ready for town meeting, then we've got to make a decision almost before we really make the community aware. Because right now, honestly, I don't think that many people are aware what the heck has
No,
been going on.
I don't
Yeah.
think
And
anyone has
so-
any
No.
idea.
So,
So what if we used the town meeting as was voted last March, right? Was that we were gonna start this committee and start to do this work. So we're gonna need to be reporting on that anyway, and there will be a lot to report. And then, when the time arises, we can do a special meeting.
Right.
Yeah.
On the site. And a vote, because I think that makes sense for the project anyway, rather than kind of bundling it into all of the other business of what a town meeting's all
So-
about.
Kind of have to agree that, well, it'd be nice to have the funds start to roll in. If you do that before you've communicated it and it made, then people are gonna not feel that they have any ownership in it. They're gonna feel we're
And-
trying to shove it down,
the other thing to mention is that, until you come out the other side of something with a permit, you have no idea what you're actually
Right.
gonna be
Right.
getting.
Yeah.
So it's important, I think, with the messaging we've been trying to to talk about it, is that, it's difficult to start to talk about concepts and drafts and preliminary stuff. And to try to get input, because people really only have, people are busy. There's only so much bandwidth to take in new information because you're just swamped all the time with it. So it's really important for us that whatever snippet people take away from whatever junction when we're talking about this stuff, that it's a good snippet and it's not the 450 units in the journal. We want it to be hey, we're looking into it, but nothing. I mean, it's not 100% decided yet. Like this process isn't. It doesn't work like that. If it worked like that, there'd be houses everywhere, and things would be very different. So I think that's an important at town meeting when we're talking
That's
about it. It's
It's a
just
great place to do that.
really got to be, as cautiously optimistic as we can be, I guess is the word.
And for that, I just think there's still so many unanswered questions, because like you said, right now what they're looking
But
at
there
is
will be until
capacity, and then it's how is
It's
that
permanent.
implemented, and
But that's
And how do you-
that's why nobody
How
develops,
do you-
because there's so much
At
uncertainty,
town meeting, having a 20-minute presentation or something like
Yep.
that,
which we can totally do. And that's a good set. So the concept report right now is being delayed based on some interpretation of wastewater rules. And basically waiting for the state to give us feedback. I'm hoping it'll come in writing, but I doubt it.
Mhm.
do we even know yet what it's gonna cost, this evaluation, this assessment by Enman and Kesselring?
What do you mean, the one they're doing right now?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's $40,000. The concept study. Are you thinking about
I'm thinking,
preliminary design and all
Yes.
that?
Yeah,
no,
the
we
next
don't,
phase.
we don't know yet. No.
Okay.
That's,
cause that's gonna be a big number.
yeah, I've, when I talked about it with Patrick, he was throwing out numbers that were a little bit less, I think, Henry, than what you and I had talked about a little
Okay.
bit, so. But yeah, but it's not it's hundreds of thousands of dollars, yes.
Yeah.
So I think, what they're hoping to do is finish the first thing and then give us here's a here's a scope and fee for,
Mhm.
part two, which they're calling preliminary design, which would then you would really start to dig into where are things going, what do they look like, get what permits are needed, reaching out to the permit people, the state, getting them comfortable with it, so that when you go into a final design and you're actually going for permits, it's, all the entities that need to sound off on it have already kind of, hopefully looked at it, and hopefully when it comes before them again, they'll just go, yes, you're good.
Rubber stamp.
Yeah, well, nobody does that, but hopefully they wouldn't take the full allotment of their time that they get to take when.
But I think
You're
we
doing the
need to
permit.
start thinking about where those hundreds of thousands of dollars
Yep.
are gonna come from that, because that's likely anyways, as long as we support this whole concept,
Mhm.
where that's a likely expense we're gonna have.
Over time,
Mhm.
Well, in the next 2 year, over the next
Yeah.
2 years.
Well, how much have we already dedicated out of the ARPA funds?
40,000 for the concept study.
And what do we have left? 200?
242,
240,
242.
yeah, okay, so there's that money.
which would be a great place to go. I'm just really worried about us, acting as if we know all the answers before we actually do, before
Right.
the town,
Exactly.
because we're front running the town on, we're making the decision before presenting it to the town for them to decide whether this
Mm,
is something they would support.
mhm.
Mhm.
Well, and I,
Just doesn't look good.
yeah, it doesn't look good. And I don't think we have, I still feel like we're just so far away from figuring out how we're gonna work out who's gonna have which piece of those houses, how we're gonna control the costs, all those things, how many are gonna be
Yeah, I mean,
rent controlled versus
maybe
single family,
now
are they
you're
gonna be
just
on the
at the
market?
point
It's just,
where,
there's just a
know,
lot out there.
does the board feel comfortable with the concept of the, not, obviously not, no town meeting, no voting, anything like that. Does the board feel comfortable with the concept of what we're, talking about, which is the, local option tax to, support what Henry talked about, which is all the stuff related to
Mhm.
housing.
I think it's a great idea. I mean, that was really a smart idea. It's just how it's
Well,
presented to the town and.
Kudos to those before us that didn't do it. Right?
Right.
I think
Yeah.
that's the other, it was never, for better, or for worse, it was never
Mhm.
enacted, so it's a tool
Mhm.
in the toolbox, whereas if it was already
Being
in
used.
place and being utilized, it wouldn't be a tool. And I think it's a bigger reflection, the lack of adoption is a bigger reflection of kind of how most local communities feel about, resources, spending money and all that stuff. I think
Mhm.
most towns are cheap. Not in a bad way. It's a good thing.
Well, we're careful.
Thrifty.
No, I
we're careful.
think, yeah, frugal,
Yeah.
smart should have been the word, right?
Yeah, smart.
So I think it's good to have it at your disposal.
Mhm.
And then I think the last thing to mention is that, we've got a couple committee members that are going up to an event tomorrow, which should be really, really great in terms of just bringing back new information to the housing, effort here in Dorset.
Mhm.
And networking and making connections. Actually, the event's actually put on by White and Burke, which is the consultant that's gonna be working with us for.
Yeah, do we
Raptor
know,
Lane.
what that's gonna cost?
No.
Okay.
No. We'll soon though, hopefully. Supposed to be this week. So when I get that, I'll send it around. And it's basically gonna consist of looking at, all of our materials, the original environmental review that was done for Raptor Lane. Town office stuff, this concept study, some of the, we did surveys, if you remember way back when,
Mhm.
like 2018, 2019,
We
we
did.
like surveyed people and, housing was one of the 5 things listed. And even some of the old subdivision, stuff from before we owned it. We'll go through all that stuff and then try to get a sense of how to guide us as to where we're at.
Just think there are so many things in this state that, just are in perpetual discussion. And housing has been one of those where, the lack of housing is one of the top priorities for everybody, and everybody's been talking about it for years and actually accomplishing something.
It's usually a resource
Be-
thing,
Mhm.
is a big part of
But,
it.
but I'm
And then-
looking, you know, something, you know, we got the topic coming up, the old, you know, forever broadband was the, you know, oh, well, you know, someday we'll have a plan, whatever, we'll leave it up to you, whatever. And now it's actually done.
Mhm.
Because of $10 million.
Bingo. Because $10 million came, you know, because we had a pandemic.
We always wanted to do it, we just didn't have the $10 million.
Well, actually, you
Yeah,
know,
exactly
if it were
right.
left up to the state,
So,
the state would have never used funds
correct, yeah,
to do it. It's
Yeah.
only because,
yeah, because the region got organized and then
Yeah.
advocated for itself, yeah, no, I think it's.
which, I mean, when they set up the whole CUD thing, the
Great
whole idea
success.
was you'd go out and borrow the money to provide it and then
Yep.
try to get a
To
payback.
make it, yeah, and
But
it's not dissimilar to housing, because you've got, you know, private entities that just can't, you know, they can't spend that money, they can't make it work, they're never gonna get their money back.
Right.
And you can't, you can't force somebody to lose money, right?
Right.
I mean, I think it's, that's similar synergies. I think the housing thing is a little different because you've got so many just layers of regulation and processes that you have to go through, and depending on, you know, large or small, it doesn't really matter, you still have to go through it.
But still, we ended up getting 300 acres for next to nothing, and then we.
Yeah, I mean, we're so lucky. I mean, we
Yeah.
Yeah.
free land and we have a local option tax that can fund all the
You
infrastructure.
have a lot of the
And,
resources
and
to
you're lopping
make it
25 to
viable.
30% of the cost of the house right off the top.
Yeah,
So you
Which
can
is
sell
just-
it for actually 300,000
which is,
Well,
or
that's-
350.
that's
And
the
that's
phenomenal
where,
thing.
that's where White and Burke and the developers are
Mhm.
gonna come in.
But the state generally, you know, this is our biggest thing, we need to do this. They're our biggest obstacle, you know, in the
Yeah.
end,
They're
even when we have,
Yeah.
lucky enough to have all the pieces together.
Yeah.
The
Yeah, no,
guys who are demanding we do this, you know.
So we had to get a 250 permit, right, amendment for Chanticleer.
Yeah.
Right?
We
Yeah.
Oh,
just-
right, of
we
course.
just got it last week. I
Yeah,
filed it in the second week in August.
it's crazy.
And that
That's
was,
not bad.
well, that's just the,
Considering what it's
4 months.
the building has been going, yeah, building was going for a month.
it's
It's absurd.
it's to turn it's to create
So
a
it's just
field.
kind of the wheels, it just,
I don't know whether we're gonna let you go create that field.
well, yeah, no, you're right.
It's nonsensical.
It just speaks to you have to be
Talk
in
about
the
a
car,
rubber stamp.
in the car going 50 miles an hour to get to where you want to go. And if you're not in the car going 50 miles an hour yet, then you're
Mhm.
not, you don't even realize that you're not in the car. So you gotta get in the car, I think, and get in line, because otherwise you're way back here and there's traffic, you know, the whole way through. And I think it just, to me, it's definitely symptomatic of a lot of, and you should read the permit. I mean, we have to put a fence up on the edge of Brookside so that we, remember not to mow too close to Brookside, even though Brookside itself is privately owned.
Who's
and
coming
they're-
up with
they're
this
gonna mow
crap?
it. The Rivers people.
Yeah, exactly.
Cause that's their job. Their job is to comment on your permit, and they're not gonna
So
just
they're
say,
darn well gonna comment.
they're not gonna
something.
say no comment. Yeah, they're gonna come up with something, yeah.
Stupidity.
And that's,
You think you should-
Earned my 6-figure salary.
too
We
much-
think you should stand on your head for 3 weeks.
Yeah,
and,
too much
you know,
government regulation.
well, and it's just, it can make things impossible or more expensive and or impossible to do. You know, just practically speaking, I think that's it's easy to look at, the process and be overwhelmed by it.
Mind-boggling.
Everybody kind of gets to poke at you and,
Yep.
And that's
Boy, they like. to
just
talk
one
shit.
part, right? With something like Raptor Land, you're gonna have both state and local. You're gonna have,
Mhm.
everybody's getting to have an opinion about it. And that's why nothing happens in Vermont, because everybody wants
I
to
know.
have an opinion. Everybody wants to, well, I think it should be
Make
this.
sure that,
It's
that,
like
that putty root plant doesn't.
Yeah, what was it, the hairy fern or something?
Downy Woodland,
Down you wouldn't.
There was some hairy.
which we're
So-
planning on.
It was. I
To
know.
recap.
Yep.
We are in agreement that a local option tax is a really neat opportunity for the town of Dorset. And that now is not the right time to start to think about enacting it. But that once there is a use that is ready to pursue, that we will do that through a special meeting vehicle when the time and the need is right.
Which will actually try to use town meeting to sort of debut or whatever was the thought, right?
Well, yeah, certainly town
Definitely
meeting
be an
should be
update.
there to update and say what progress we've made on housing and what that might look like and what the options are. And then the
it-
concept that if we were to go down that path, the option tax would help us get there.
Yes.
I just hope we don't wait until we have a permit in hand.
Yeah.
Before we
Yeah.
authorize.
I think honestly, we start to try, the reason I want it to be public is because I want, like with the school districts, we're looking at the major restructuring. And we had public meetings at each of the schools, so five different public meetings where to hear input. And, to give people that opportunity to speak is really important. You start to learn, because right now, we could kind of guess what was gonna come out of that. And a lot of it, in hindsight, it wasn't surprising, but
There's
I
no
didn't, I wouldn't have
difference.
guessed what it was, what the
Yeah,
comments
and
were.
there's definitely, well, but now, the flip side of that, you gotta re-engage, Jim, because you've got different information that the board's talking about than what was talked about in those meetings. Too, from my vantage point, but it's a good, you have
Which I'm
to,
happy to give anybody.
you
an
gotta have
update
that
if they want,
continued
but-
back and forth, which I think is,
Well, we had,
It's
we
important.
had five 2-hour meetings with the public in, different towns. And then the last board meeting was, the board spent a couple hours discussing and,
Yep.
and put it on the superintendent to come up with an initial proposal. And that's gonna be trotted out soon.
which I've seen already. But but to your point, though, like for me, it got me to go to that meeting and got me to listen and go, oh geez, and now I'm interested and now I'm
Yeah,
gonna
you shouldn't have that now because
continue to,
basically nobody's supposed to have that.
yeah.
Well, to
So if
Liz's
we
point,
promote
we agree.
it if we,
I agree.
and if we
Sorry.
promote that at the town meeting, there is gonna be a presentation on the work of this committee over the last year.
Yeah.
It could feasibly be said that obviously part of any good presentation would be some financing option.
Right.
Pieces to what we'd like to see as
Yeah.
phase two,
How
and that is
impact
perhaps
people.
where
But I
it
think-
could.
One thing we might also want to consider, something we did with the
Flashlight.
schools.
Tax, yeah.
Was we created essentially a Google document where anybody could submit their comments. So we might give the public a way to
Mhm.
provide their input
Mhm.
on it. They could speak out at the meeting, but they also, it's kind of important to give
Yeah.
people, if you have
Yeah,
comments or
absolutely.
thoughts, please
Yeah.
provide them. Here's how you can do it.
Right.
Yeah, no, it's a good idea.
Yeah, and this document
Those are
that
easy to do too.
the committee has put together is a really good first step. So from this, you can add visuals and there it is.
Well, and I think also we just have to remember what we asked the residents. We asked, should we form a committee and pursue this and look at options? We didn't ask them, shall we come up with our own plan and tax you guys ahead of time to make sure that we have some money in case we decide to do it. And by the way, this is what we decided to do. I just, we need to make sure that we're
distributed?
addressing what we've been tasked to do and making sure that, the town knows what this is. And, so I think you're right. It will be informational. We have to get our information. We have to figure out what we're thinking is actually the plan, not just something that's
which-
realistic.
Yep.
And then this is one element of that, an important element of how it could happen.
Right, because we have to be realistic.
Yes, we have to be realistic.
And that would be showing realism that,
And
it's because it is a huge project for what is,
Yeah,
a fairly small town.
For us, it's a big.
Yes,
And-
we're a small town.
But we've thought it through and we think it could actually work financially. And in the end, it's win-win-win. It's housing for workforce. It's more grand list to lower all of our taxes.
But you know, there are gonna be some people in town who are just gonna not like the idea because people don't like change and they end up, why do we have to do this here and all that
That's
stuff.
why it's super critical that
That's,
we
start getting it
protect
out
it
there.
and steward it and
Yeah,
And
and try to
present it as a,
identify the people that might not like it and try to make them like it.
exactly.
well, that's what
I
I think
mean,
it's
when you-
just, right now, it's still too
But
vague.
you
I
have
think.
that, well, and so the
You have to
permit,
answer their questions.
my understanding of the design and permit process, and once we finally get a proposal from Inman, we'll know a little bit better, but it's like the preliminary design part of it's probably gonna take a year. And then kind of final and permitting itself is gonna be at least another year probably. Maybe
Yeah.
more, depending, that just, and that assumes things go swimmingly, in terms of the process, which we just, at least I just complained about for 5 minutes, so it's
Yeah.
like, once the process gets thrown in there, then you're, unless it changes, where it's different, it could add more time to it, so there is
But-
some time.
But I think where we were after town meeting last year and our first housing committee meetings, in, when was it, June or
Yeah.
April, May,
Yeah.
June, July,
Spring.
we were just like throwing, we were floundering. I mean,
Well,
And
without
then
the
it
site
started-
control on a site, I mean, I think that's the biggest thing. You've got something tangible that you really can sink your teeth into,
Exactly.
and to your point, Henry, it's been.
but it's really much more gelling now, as far
No,
as being able to perceive this is feasible, rather than like, oh my God, where are we gonna get $50 million? It's not that.
No, it's
It's-
definitely not that,
it's-
but I'm not sure we're at the point where we're gonna start
No, I-
telling people to pay money for it.
I get that,
And I
I
don't
get
think
that.
people would
but I think we
necessarily.
It's
are.
gonna
support that.
color
I think
their-
it's a much
color their
harder
view.
sell. So I think we need to get to where we are in a place where we think it's realistic, not just how many can we fit on this piece of land,
Mhm.
but what is this going to be for? Who's it gonna be for? Which piece is which? Because there's still some of
Which
those
they're-
things.
Henry's got,
Is
they're
it
crafting
109?
some of the
Is it
answers
less?
to all that
Yeah.
stuff.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
we're
we're
just
working
not,
on
we're
that.
not quite there.
But what
There's
are the-
some critical things. I mean, there's the engineering study, there's the work with White and Burke is gonna be really helpful. There's a lot of stuff going on.
Right.
And the general, I think,
Right.
to throw it out there too, the general target audience is, we're calling it workforce and senior housing.
Yep.
So that's the general.
Right.
I think
But
that's,
we
that's
can-
gonna be the thing you hear over and over and over again.
But I can imagine we can get this to the point in the not too distant future where people will be encouraging us to do the local option tax to support it.
Let's hope so.
Yeah, if we get it
There you
into a
go.
good, into a good spot, but I think my point is, even though I know everybody wants to act and I know we happen to have our town meeting in March, I just think this is something that's so important that we shouldn't be rushing something through before it's really
Baked.
gelled.
Yeah.
Like, look where we are from where it started, and it's going to be even more so by the time we say, okay, this is, here's an option tax, this is what it could look like. Because I just think, otherwise you risk it just being people saying no or not knowing, having too many questions. You won't, there'll be plenty of questions, but you want them to be more focused. So I think we're all in agreement. I just don't think we should rush just to get it at town meeting.
Yeah, I think we all agree with that.
Sound good? There definitely should, there'll be another update next month for sure.
Okay, so we've got appoint a CUD alternate rep, otherwise known as Rob.
Yep.
Rob, are you willing and able to take on this?
Be like that guy with 15
able.
hats. Willing,
Oh.
are you willing?
I'm able. No, I can do it.
All right.
It's not a huge, it's like once every great while there's a Zoom meeting.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Yeah, it's not.
Then I move we appoint the one and only Rob Giotti to be the alternative rep to our regional CUD.
I will second that.
All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Now they've got the annual reports in there.
Yep.
And we have to actually sign the resolution in the form provided, I think, sent out to you guys. To appoint Rob as the alternate. Rob, you know,
Do we have that here or
Is
no?
it in this packet, Jim, or do we need?
I sent it to you by email, didn't I?
Probably.
No, it's not, not in the packet.
I will have to send it around.
Okay.
It just requires
Yeah,
the, it's a resolution, so. I sent you the form, it's just a quick, it says Rob's it. And as the alternate, I'm still the whatever, and, you know, it just has to be signed off on, so as long as you know the resolution's done. The board doesn't need to sign it or anything.
Okay. All right. So I can just edit it and then add the minutes to it or something and then send it to him.
Yeah.
Okay. Makes sense.
So did you want to do the town budget or the old new business? Doesn't matter, different order in the package.
Oh, we can do it.
Town budget.
Sure.
Okay.
I've heard it. And so, and that should say FY 26, geez, can you get out the gate?
I didn't notice that either.
Obviously, it's early in the drafting process, and so the FY 26, and it's not 2022, it's 24. But the 4% increase is correct. Apparently,
I think honestly,
Are
on
we
this
sure
one,
about
that's
that?
the only thing that
Rob,
changed in this. So.
I think because I think build the build was in last year's as well.
Oh, yeah,
So
no,
you just copied it straight
It's
from.
a template for sure, but I can definitely say that the bulk of what's in the line items and stuff has hopefully been updated. Unless I didn't save over it, but it looks like it is. So,
Look good.
I've got a succession planning stuff for the clerk kind of outlined there. That's included into this draft budget. You get into the highway projects and stuff, there's a lot less paving than this year. But you can see the areas that we're focusing on: Beach Street, Bowen Hill, Lane Road. Continued sidewalk stuff, probably this will be back in actually in Dorset Village. Replacing some equipment. There's a big kind of bullet point there at the bottom. That we're supposed to be by Thanksgiving, they said, which is next week. And we'll see what happens. Supposed to have a report back on the Prentice Pond Dam and some of the kind of alternatives for I guess repair and replacement of it, which is a really loaded kind of complex project, which is not something that I don't think I would, you know, I short of a directive from the state saying thou shalt have to do something within a certain time frame. It's really up to the board in terms of, okay, what makes the most sense. Now, there's a lot of things at play, like there's a water line that goes through the dam, there's a road over the top of the dam. There's a failing structure, a drop inlet structure that's failing under the road, and all that has to kind of, you know, work its way out in terms of, you know, how much longer can the failing structure last? What's the prognosis on the water line? Can that get replaced? And then what's your, you know, paving schedule and for the road? So I'm seeing something, I don't know, could be within 5 years, could be within 10 years, I don't know, but where you might be able to kind of bring a lot of that stuff together. Big part of it's resources. We put our hat in the ring for some hazard mitigation grant money, didn't get anything this time. But it doesn't mean that we couldn't, there's a separate hazard mitigation pot of money for some planning stuff that we couldn't seek to tap into that for maybe, you know, potentially design of whatever this is gonna look like. So that's just a warning, I guess, that there's a big liability coming at some point, you know, with that,
Right.
the dam itself, you know, could be the dam, the water line, the road stuff, you could be looking at, it could be almost $1 million. Spent in
Wow,
that one,
okay.
you know, but when I say $1 million, I mean like, you know, it's a new water line on all of Church Street probably, or a big chunk of Church Street. It's repaved. We would probably rebuild the green at the same time, like the whole little, that whole little part of the village would get reconstructed at the same time.
Rebuild the green.
Yeah, I think we got curbing that's all, you know,
Falling
falling.
over.
Yeah.
Okay.
And the water line goes right under it.
Yeah.
So, and there's gonna be, the water line is, would be moved to the south, but there's still, when it gets connects to 30, it goes right underneath the green. So you're, in order to
But just
replace
renewing
that,
Curtis
you're,
Pond,
you're tearing up the.
why would that mean we need to do the water line all the way up there?
Right.
It's just, I'm putting the district,
Trying to
the
find
fire
a-
district hat on, they're probably not far off from
Okay.
potentially a project there too. So it may
Okay.
make sense to
Just
Combine-
makes sense.
combine them all and like wait, you know.
When you're gonna be digging things up, you might as well dig more up and finish everything. Yeah.
One swell through.
Yeah, yeah. So, but again, that's, like I said, it's a potential big liability. And there's not a ton of, for the dam work itself, I've been trying to figure out, like,
Yeah,
there's,
money.
there's AOT, like, there's AOT grants for the structure, for like for the culvert structure under the road, there's grants for paving, and it's how could we try to sync all that up at the same time?
Right.
To where, you know, we could really defray the cost, or it's not a humongous, you know, burden all in 1 year. So, moving on to other stuff, the bond, full payment of the bond, this will be the second year of that, personnel, pretty boilerplate, pretty similar to last year. Miscellaneous stuff, just a footnote about continuing recreation crew time, funding, because it's, been really good so far. And, also money in here for, we anticipate that after we finish the reappraisal that, there's gonna be some need for consulting as it relates to assessing. And that we would probably contract with, an MC to do that. Manchester's doing that. It seems like it's definitely something to, at least, thinking about making sure we have the resources to do if we need it, which I'm pretty sure we are. And then, some of the stuff like the town office stuff, we've got placeholders in here, you know, stuff like, you know, and we're not gonna have, fuel oil costs, the heat will be in the electricity. How much is that? I don't know. That's what we're trying to kind of work through and figure out. We have some stuff from McClay.
Mhm.
So the rest of that stuff will get more fully baked. And then I think one of the other biggies is what are the fire departments gonna do? And then the sheriff contract, this past May, the hourly rate increased, a good amount. Up to, I think it's 72 an hour now. Which sounds like a lot, but the state police were 70 like years ago when we.
Yeah, I remember
them,
that,
So,
yeah.
so it's not, so it's kind of catching up a little bit.
Yeah, yeah.
But ultimately to provide the, you know, the services that we're wanting, more of, we're, you know, that line item is creeping up there, to almost $160,000.
Wow.
You know, a few years ago, so
It was 70.
it was under 100,
Yeah.
yeah, so,
What is the, what do you think you're gonna need
Fine.
now that you're a demolition expert to
Take this
demolish
down.
this?
we've earmarked 175,000 with ARPA money to knock this down.
Oh,
Uh,
it's part of what we already allocated.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry.
Yep, I've already kind of gone through that, so
Yep.
it won't be a budgetary, piece, it won't fall
Mhm.
into the budget.
Yep. Okay.
In theory.
Yep.
And I think, so the Chanticleer ended up being about, it was 74,000.
Yeah.
To get it, and dumpsters, and gone. And that's. Then that was the low bid. So. As far as the rest of the breakdown, you can kind of look and see department by department. Overall represents a 4% increase right now from year to year. And there's a lot of other stuff that's got to get kind of formalized and baked in, but I think that's the biggest thing, 4%, and we flip over to the capital improvement plan for paving and for equipment, I've got.
Just wondering, before we get back to that, and
Yep.
the, the Dorset Economic Development, I'm just kind of, just curious, I mean, we've been doing that 38 year, in support. I think it makes sense. I was just kind of curious from the perspective of, we're still looking at that as important, needed, and a good investment.
I would say yes, and I would say it's probably high time that we have a more formal
Plan for,
more formal update of the board with some of the metrics and information and stuff.
I think it'd be helpful. It's just,
Yep.
I mean, because I have no doubt that it's useful for us to do, but
Yeah, when it's underwriting, it's helping to underwrite the chamber website, social media stuff, yeah. Kind of web presence and updates, so I will get
also one other thing I just kind of noticed in the,
an update.
payroll tax, FICA, Medicare.
Yeah,
There's
that's,
a higher percentage than the wage increase you were talking about, so,
those numbers are, yeah, they're just placeholders.
okay.
Yeah, it's still, we've got to do the computations there, so I tried to push them up high and then we can always lower them.
Which that's fine, I just always expect them to go
Yep,
in sync
to-
with the salary numbers. So.
Correct, yeah. Let's see. So I think that maybe the paving thing is the first thing to talk about. When you look at all the paving we did, which was 2 years of paving in 1 year because of the water project, we ended up going over budget by about $64,000, $65,000. So the paving fund I'm showing a deficit after this year. There's a couple options you can. This past year, our annual budget line item number for that was 155,000. This year, the new number that I have in there, which is in the budget that you just saw at the 4%, was 172.5. As far as I can see, that we have two options. We can either increase the 172.5 up to 230. Or you potentially could use ARPA money to defray some of that paving cost. Which is, we didn't pave last year, and a portion of last year's stuff cost more this year, essentially. And that was the village paving that we did. So not great news to be, in the on the wrong side of it there in the fund, but there are a couple options. So what I've said is, we could potentially pull down 65,000 and from the ARPA reserve and make that whole so that you wouldn't have a dramatic line item increase from year to year to try to pay back the overrun.
I don't think that's a good use of ARPA money. I'd much rather see ARPA money go into something that has a 10, 20-year benefit rather than, a paving job that lasts
Paving,
3 to 5 years.
no, still longer than that. 10 years on the minimum. Some of the village stuff would be longer, but yeah, no, I see your point.
It just feels to me that should be part of the regular budget. And so you'd be adding $50,000-$60,000 to the
65, yeah. If it was
But
done.
we just had an
in the-
extraordinary year for
in the 1 year, yeah.
That's the thing though, that
It's the first time I've ever had it happen. So, and it wasn't, we could have delayed paving, but you had a grant already in place for Morse Hill Road, and I didn't want to lose that. And then we had already delayed the village paving a year.
Right.
So we were,
Right.
and that stuff was 20 years.
Yeah.
Was 06 to 24, so not quite 20 years, but
Yeah.
it was in really rough shape and needed to get done, so we did it. So yeah, I can, however you guys want to do it, I can put that back into the budget and then we can try to figure out how to make that work.
Well, I mean,
That makes sense.
I kind of agree with Henry in the sense that I think it's nice to use the ARPA money. It's nice to use the ARPA money. It's nice that we have the ARPA money to use for aspirational things or things that are, you know, things that we wouldn't have had otherwise. On the other hand, I also understand that, you know, all of this, whatever happens when we put it in the budget, we want to make sure that we're not just increasing taxes for a residence based on, you know, something that happened. But I think if we can put it in the budget and see where we come out once the
Okay.
numbers start to finalize. And if we need to shave 30,000 from ARPA funds, we can do that. Call it, you know, better of both. I mean, right now, you know,
Yeah, I
that
think-
$240,000 for architecture fees is just, you know, we're just throwing numbers out there. So whether it's 30,000 less or not.
It's also, I mean, on the paving end, you know, we have a plan.
Mhm.
We, you know, we deviated from the plan. But, you know, we have a
For
plan
specific
for
reasons, yeah.
consistent expenditures and consistent,
Mhm.
you know, amount allocated each year. And actually, you know, here very clearly, you know, planning on you know, certainly through 2029, rebuilding the reserve a bit.
Yeah, I mean, usually,
So
like I said, this is the most dramatic. I mean, we've been close to zero a couple times, I think. And that's just based on
Right.
our ability to budget and
So I'm
estimate.
just thinking for, you know, for this year to end up saying we have to, you know, kick up way above our normal allocation for the year because of, you know, that also is not quite, you know, that doesn't seem fully warranted either but, you know, if you have to do it, you have to do it, but you know, because here, if you look at, you're still talking about at this point at the end of 2025 having a surplus.
With the,
At-
yeah, and
at-
that's because the 170 that we're
If
estimating.
we use the 65 of,
Yeah, and the 170 is just an estimate. So
Yeah.
I don't know where that's actually gonna, you know, that's what I estimate that we'll spend based on the project sizes. But
okay.
it may be
okay.
more, maybe less, and that's where the, you know, if you look to the previous year,
Because
really the previous 2 years, we carried the village stuff forward, and that probably increased it by about 25,000 or so. And then,
And honestly, we can, you know, we can run a negative balance in here, but you know, it's not the cleanest thing in the world, but
yeah,
you can.
so the other suggestion I would have is that you know, you could take that over multiple years, but I mean, we've never done it that way.
And just thinking, we don't want to fill it with ARPA
Typically when
funding,
there's, I
then
think
you
the
could-
last
probably
time,
better to blend it over a couple of years to
Yep.
catch up.
yeah, yep, I mean, that's another option too. If you wanna say, you know, take that 65 and spread it over 2 years or 3 years or something like that, you
Just
can do that too.
Boost up our, you know, for a couple of years, boost our.
Yeah, I
annual
think the last, so
allocation.
we had this happen, I think in maybe equipment once, and it was a lower number, so it was easy just to
Right.
carry it forward. It was
Yeah.
like $15,000 or $20,000,
Yeah.
So it was easy just to kind of plop it forward and you didn't see it like increase everything else that much. So,
Mhm.
yep, we can
Okay,
do that.
Rob, on the page before that, the revenues,
Mhm.
I just noticed on, I may be wrong here, but looks like, short-term rental registration show up twice.
Does it? Yep. you're
Halfway
right.
down and then
It
most of the way
does.
down.
It does. Thank you.
And the operating transfer down at the bottom, that just was a surplus.
That was if you remember, we got unemployment insurance.
Oh, right,
And then we
okay,
liquidated
Yep.
the sinking fund.
okay, so that was one, okay, great, thank you.
What was with the short-term rental?
It was listed twice.
Yeah,
Yeah, so we're showing the
Gotcha.
15,000,
Yep,
15,000.
Yep.
it's aspirational, but we're gonna get 15,000 twice, which 15 is probably a low number. If they
Right.
all actually come through,
Right.
but yeah. One needs to be in there once. And then really quick, the equipment thing, the equipment plan, you can see that, next year is, this year was a large truck that we've ordered and who knows when we'll get it. And then next year is a backhoe. It is, for 2006.
Really nitpicky thing.
Yep.
First line, the Western Star, we replaced already, so it's no
Oh, the
longer
date?
2013.
No, so it's still in service.
Oh,
So we've ordered one,
okay,
but we haven't paid, we haven't, yeah.
okay.
We're hoping that we'll have it by December, but I don't think that's gonna happen. Yeah, and this is a lot more regular in terms of what it looks like. Just the annual allocation, I think I've got it going down just a little bit. And that was trying to give some back to paving, so. And that's based on if you look out kind of 2-3 years, that's where we're trying to keep it above above zero. So. That's, if you remember, typically at the December meeting, I'll come back with more personnel stuff, and then a lot of the numbers will be more fine tuned, and hopefully we'll have a better sense of what the overall number looks like.
Okay. Okay, good. New business, old business.
Old business.
It was says new business, old business. Old new business.
Oh.
Or new old business.
Old business, new business. There's a lot of communities that have on their agenda, it says, minutes, old business, new business, other business, and that's it.
Yeah, it's very fun.
Smart.
And if you want to know what's going on, show up.
Yeah.
That's kind of the way
I
they
think
approach
that's
it,
pretty
so.
smart.
So I'll try to go through the stuff that we didn't talk about. Talked about the office, there's a picture there. There's some more pictures that I can provide too. Swing up there and take a look at it if you haven't. It's really starting to come together. It's pretty neat. Let's see. I'm still awaiting proposal from MSK for some stuff related to this side and the similar complaints that like what we heard in
Mhm,
30. On the lot, Mance Engineering is now in their court, and they're kind of working through getting the data from Frank and moving forward. Short-term rentals, we are up to 26 registered. I think it might be actually 28 now. And we sent out a second round of letters, and then there's one more round that goes out, and the software I think has been useful twice already, because there's been 2 people that have basically said, well, I don't do it. And I said, well,
Are you at?
like, I could book it tomorrow, according to Airbnb, so maybe I'll book it. And that's, okay. Well, yes, yeah, so it's like all over $300.
Oh, yeah, I
It's
am
incredible.
doing that,
Like,
yeah.
it's like,
Oh.
tell a little fib, save
So
$300.
crazy.
Like, and usually when you talk to them about it, you know, they kind of understand why and the reasons and stuff, so. So I still suspect that number is gonna go up to as high as 50 or 60, I think. Altogether, I think there's some that are just biding their time until we really.
Because what was the estimate they came up with when they said that there were so many that they could find, and they estimated that would be more than that, wasn't it like 70 to 100?
Yep,
Something like that.
120 was kind of the larger world in which they were looking at, and that's basically anything that's been rented in a certain, like 18 months or something like that.
But that could be like 2 units within one building or something.
Potentially, yeah, there's some of that where it's repeats, and then there's some where, it's not, they're, like, it's not available anymore. Like, there's been a couple of those where, like, it was a separate, it was a cottage, and now, daughter's, living there,
Mhm.
so
Okay.
obvious, so now
But
it's not.
there,
Yeah, because
not
it
there
seems very low to me, but.
but you
I-
can make it, you can
understanding
make
it's
people
new.
aware that, okay, we do have, we're gonna be alerted when it, it starts to be raining again, so.
Yeah, no, I think, and that's the software has been useful for that, we're able to go on and see that it's, whether or not the listing is active, and that's an indication of, well, I don't rent it, well, your listing's active, so,
Mhm.
and somebody could book it again tomorrow, so that's,
Mhm.
That was not active now, then,
that says that.
but it was active 3 months ago,
Open
then,
for business.
Yeah, and it's a rolling 12 months, so any 14 days within the 12 months, you have to register, that's the way the rules are. So
And what is the penalty for not abiding by the rules?
it's an ordinance, so it can be pretty stiff, and it can be a certain amount a day.
Yeah, okay.
It can be hundreds of dollars a day if you
Okay.
want to
Yeah.
follow up on it, so.
So if the carrot doesn't work,
Yeah,
pull out
no,
the stick.
so, yeah, I think we're not quite there yet, but we'll get there eventually.
Okay.
And yeah, I think everything else we talked about. And finance, the delinquent taxes year over year, you can see the FY 25 budget. I'll have to continue to do this. It's got the buyout, expense, and the revenues in there too, but, it's got the buyout expense listed in a line item. So when you look at the expense report with the percentages and stuff, it looks really goofy. But when you back the one-time stuff that has a revenue source for it, when you back that stuff out, we're about 37% expended in the general fund at about the 40% mark of the year.
Mhm.
So a little bit under, which is good. Let's see, and we've been a couple big projects and stuff going on. We're dabbling into more money management than we've had to do in a while, but we're doing all right without. We're not gonna have to borrow, I don't think. What's nice about the bond reimbursement process is it's pretty quick in terms of, we've been doing basically 2 invoices, for the construction project, that we can float the 2 invoices and then we'll get reimbursed, and that's been doing just fine so far from a cash flow standpoint, so.
Rob, there was,
Mhm.
the FEMA numbers were unusual, and, so we had to back those out and stuff, but.
Yep,
But
There's
one
another
item
one.
on page, 306 and at the top, new town office design.
yeah, that's the same, the 721.
Yeah,
That's the same thing. We just back those out because the bond is gonna pay for all those. But, Bonnie wants us to track it in a budget, in a line item somewhere. Essentially, so
so showing that's what we're gonna be spending,
that's what we spent.
or we spent,
That's what we've spent, yeah.
okay. And then, okay,
And then there's a revenue, like we get, the bond pays us back, so this fiscal year isn't actually gonna spend that money. It's the money associated with that.
it'll be netted in the
It'll
income
be
statement
netted
at
out,
the end, but
correct, yeah.
it's kind of weird to.
I know.
And the requisition we just approved is not included in this 721.
No, it is.
It is.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure. If you look at the spreadsheet and the requisition, it's in that realm. The 7 and change. So yeah, in theory, that's netted out by revenue, and then the FEMA expense is netted out by an equal revenue. So
Mhm.
both are zeroed out. But
Okay. Thanks.
the accountant wants us to track it in the general fund,
Mhm.
and then she basically backs it out when the audit happens.
Just as an adjustment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but it is, for me and Nancy, it's definitely frustrating, because you're looking at it going, whoa, wait a minute.
Yeah,
And then,
right.
oh yeah, Okay. It's abnormal looking, but it's okay. And I think we just paid the fire departments this week too. And also the school payments in the AP too. No, it's state payment, actually.
Hmm.
We've already paid the school. So that's all I have.
Make a motion to approve the finance report.
I'll second that.
All in favor, say aye.
I,
Morse Hill Road is done. As you can imagine, people drive very fast on it now,
Guilty.
but it's beautiful.
It is nice.
And the,
It's so nice driving on a brand new road like
I know,
that.
isn't it?
Yeah,
It's like, oh.
yeah, it's our
And,
business.
and the
With my
shoulders filled
Yeah,
in.
yeah, the shoulders.
The shoulders were looking scary before.
Yeah, no, it's a vendor. Yeah,
That was quite a machine they had.
the shoulder machine.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, that's
yeah,
interesting.
it's the best way to do it.
Yeah.
Once it gets compacted. and
Yeah, you
stuff,
could
'cause-
tell.
Yeah,
It's gonna stay. It's a
in
real shoulder.
some spots it will, in other spots it won't.
It's you get a real good
It's right.
rain and
It's incredibly
that stuff
frustrating.
looks like it's not going anywhere and then it's
Oh,
amazing
yeah,
what
it'll-
a strong rain does.
Yeah,
Well, look at the rivers.
Little
and
slowly,
Hurricane
yeah.
Irene.
Look at across at my house.
yeah, but that's, you know, I think
Yeah,
it's
water takes.
a good project. That's altogether, that was a little less than $500,000 to do all that.
That's pretty amazing.
And then for a little town like us to be able to keep a schedule, get a grant and keep a road like that in that kind of shape is pretty cool. So it's, yeah, good job. Good job. You know, the paving vendor is local from Danby, so.
And they did a great job.
Yeah, we're lucky that they're right here. And we get pricing indicative of living,
Mhm.
close to a paving plant. So we're kind of lucky all around. Let's see, winter prep, all the other stuff is kind of boilerplate. The fire district project, gonna continue a second phase of service line work into 2025. And the new well on Cheney is going to be pump tested, after Thanksgiving. And we've been able to actually even increase the gallons per minute rate that they're gonna pump test at, to basically try to get as high as we can possibly get, which could be north of 130 gallons a minute, maybe 150 gallons a minute, which is, yeah, really good. So, and that process is, hopefully by, spring, they have an idea of, what's needed to build a treatment plant and some other stuff and kind of the timing on all that. So they're gonna be getting to where they thought they were a few years ago on that front. Other stuff, we talked about the study, let's see, town office, I think schedule wise, or I think we're actually pretty close to being back on schedule, thanks to Nail and Breen. Yeah, I mean, all the rest of the stuff, we've got a meeting with the, state folks for the FEMA project at Chanticleer. They're gonna come, stand on the site and take a picture to prove that the building isn't there. It's just part of it. It's like a FEMA prerequisite. It's just like they have to do it. It's part of the state's process. So that's gonna happen Friday. We do have some follow-up that has to be done probably in the spring. There's a ton of gravel under that parking lot. And the way that the permits were reading, it wanted us to just regrade stuff. So that's what happened. And, but we're gonna have to bring in probably a little bit of topsoil and then try to get seed going sometime in the spring. And then there's a bunch of plants and a fence that I talked about that we gotta put in. And that can all happen in the spring. And in theory, FEMA, or the state will pay for all that.
And you're putting in the
So-
plants and trees and stuff in as mitigation for flooding or just to look nice?
No mitigation for the root systems of the plants will
Mhm.
keep the soil, more stable. Is the
So it's just the
argument.
specific things,
Yeah,
that specific kinds of trees and
Yep.
stuff, like
Yeah.
how many do you think they're gonna put in?
There's a certain amount an acre.
Oh,
So
I
it's,
see,
it's
okay.
like, it's dozens
they
and dozens
designate
of
it, yeah.
trees, yeah,
Interesting.
which is gonna make it difficult to mow and then,
Yeah,
so. It's kind of like, you know,
I love this stuff.
yeah. But and I took pictures of the railroad bridge and I didn't put them in here, but the railroad bridge is done.
Wow,
And,
Both of them.
that was big.
yeah. Yep, and they're doing a box culvert up here right now, just north of the post office.
Yeah.
So the next time it rains, the water's there's a lot more capacity in a lot of those structures now, so.
But now it's not raining
A
anymore.
lot, yeah, right. It ever rains. It's rained and it's Murphy's Law, right? It's because I bought a plow for my side by side with over snow.
Exactly.
So that's it for that. I do have a bit of other business that we can send around the AP and payroll.
I've got some other businesses too. Or I just want to ask really, how is it gonna work? So Sandy has been elected to the legislature.
Mhm.
She's our town clerk at the same time, is that correct? And so during the legislative session, is that 3 days a week? Is she-
4 days,
Four.
3 or 4, yeah.
4 days a
Tuesday
week.
through Friday.
Yeah.
So she remains as our town clerk,
Mhm.
and that's an elected position, right?
It is, yeah.
So when is her term up?
March of 26. So what I'm foreseeing is the succession plan that kind of we had talked about. That her plan is to work until December of 25. And this was all predicated on wanting to try to be in a new building. It's a big part of it.
Sure,
She's
yeah.
been around for 20 years.
Sure, yeah, she should be.
So, December 25, that she'll stop working for town of Dorset. And then Jen would assume the full, would be the town clerk in practice. And then my recommendation would be, that either this year or next, or the March of 26, that we look to vote to make that, the clerk and treasurer position appointed. And then it would no longer be an elected position that kind of sits outside the
Mhm.
town. It sits outside the board or the town kind of management, I guess, so to speak. And that's kind of how I see it. And then you could appoint Jen to that spot. So then, there would be no more elections for the clerk. Because, you do invest some time into someone, train them up, get them ready to do it. And then it's the job that, somebody else could come,
Mhm.
Yeah,
get elected for.
right.
Right, exactly.
Or you
It doesn't make sense.
struggle to find somebody to want to
Consistency,
do it,
yeah.
to be elected. So I think there are communities that are making that shift, and it's pretty logical. Cause then the clerk then becomes just another town employee.
Mhm.
So right now, they're outside of that, where
Mhm.
there's, they're a statutory official, I guess is what I'm saying. So there's
Right.
some stuff that's different for them than it
Yep.
is for other people.
So it's gonna be a little more of a burden on
Thanks.
Jen during the months that Sandy is.
During the days of the week. that
When
Sandy's
she's at
not
the
here, yeah.
legislature.
Yep, which is, January to May, somewhere in there.
Which it's always, new employers have to make some room if there are people who are working in the legislature, but at the same time, it's like, that's a lot of the time you're supposed to be normally working. I mean,
Mhm.
so it's just.
So if you working people are in the legislature,
Do it, yeah.
Yeah,
right?
oh, it's a stupid, it's a crazy system.
Yeah, and the reality though, to the clerk position too, Henry, is that it's traditionally, it's always been, I think I put it in here, 1.25 FTE, basically, and 1.25 full-time persons.
Okay,
So
Mhm.
it's, one person being in there is okay, it's fine.
okay,
Um,
Right.
so,
Okay.
Traditionally, it's usually been a one-person job with a part-time assistant, maybe like 1 day a week to kind of help. But that's where it was for, like, when Sandy forever has been doing it, it's been Sandy and then a pretty super part-time person doing stuff like 1 day a week.
Mhm.
And 1 day a week is typically, filling in for vacations and stuff like that.
Right.
And that's what we're gonna go back to. Then, as
Right,
That's what-
but you've
that's
just
what's
been
in this
training
budget.
Jen for that.
correct, yeah.
So will Sandy be running the election then in March? I don't know.
In general, won't you?
Yeah,
Because Jen just.
no, I mean, if Sandy's not on the ballot,
Right,
she's able to run stuff.
yeah,
Mhm.
It's the specific of being on a contested ballot is
right.
Mhm.
what the rule said.
But it's good for
But
Jen
it
to get
also-
Jen to get the
Yeah,
experience.
it makes
Yeah.
sense, just like with this
Oh, yeah,
last
no,
one
she,
for her to run
yeah, I
it,
was gonna
and
say, the
then
last one is the dive.
that way
right into the
Sandy
deep
can
end,
just
so,
help. Yeah, yes,
um,
exactly. And
so
there was a
she's-
lot going on.
Yep, and I think
She did
Jen
a
did a
great
great,
job.
she did a great job.
Mhm.
Yep.
No, but I think that makes perfect sense because that's been the whole plan along the way that Jen
Yeah,
is gonna take.
it has
over,
been,
so
and there's,
just Start handing it over to her.
like I said, the office stuff kind of delayed, running for the legislature, and then, started with, Dane and some stuff, so
Mhm,
it's,
exactly.
there's reasons.
Mhm.
I have a bit of other business. There's a map on the table, and also a draft letter. So this is the Forest Service is in their kind of comment period for scoping for, that mountain bike trail that
Mhm, right.
remember I talked about way back
Yep.
when.
Vellamont.
Yep, the Belmont. And if you look at it, it goes right through Dorset. At least on this map. And this is,
Very vaguely though.
yeah, and Dorset's got a little bit of, Forest Service land on the east side and then a chunk in kind of the central northern part.
Mhm.
And that's really what this pertains to, is it's the Forest Service looking to do something on Forest Service land, and there's a whole process that has to be gone through. So right now they're taking comments, from communities and community groups and stuff on this plan, and I just have a draft letter that's there, and it's due, I think, before we meet next. So I can email it around too, but
Mhm.
it's pretty boilerplate, just saying we like the idea and
Yeah.
it's be good for Dorset.
Do we know what this yellow line
No,
really intends?
Do you mean the route or
Yeah.
the?
The route, where's that
No.
going?
We don't 100% know yet.
Okay.
Yeah, generally, it's meant to get from, the Green Mountains over to, Merck. Is what they're trying.
Right,
to-
so this looks
Emerald
like
Lake
it's,
and then over to Merck. And then
and
up
so
from
it's
Merck up
going
to-
into the hollow and then through the hollow across to.
Yep, there's two, so what they've outlined here is taking it into the bike trails on Grouse Lane.
Yep.
And then into the hollow, and then it would like go on the dirt road and then probably go through the village of Dorset, and then up over the mountain to Merck.
Okay.
Another option that potentially will be looked at is, either snaking it around the top of the hollow, like
wow.
over to Raptor Lane.
Mhm.
And then from Raptor Lane down over to the village and then back over. But this really only pertains to just the Forest Service owned stuff. Once it gets
Okay.
off of the
Okay.
Forest Service land,
Yeah,
it's Belmont, Vermont Huts and some other partners that are trying to do all that. And the town has been right there with them trying to find, a path forward for that stuff because it's pretty exciting.
I
Yeah.
mean, they could go up Church Street and out.
There
to
will
the
be,
Top of the mountain and then over to Merck, that over.
that's what they're looking
That's
at.
right.
That's what, ideally, that's what they want to do. Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
So wait, so
go
But
right
the
by your
pur-
house.
the purpose of the trail is, how is it being used?
By mountain bikes to
For mountain
connect a
bikers.
system of cabins and then also to connect basically mountain bike trail networks from community to community.
Yeah.
So
And
like
it's-
somebody could get on a bike in Massachusetts and ride to Canada,
Yeah.
going through all
Yeah.
these towns.
It's
and
like the long
staying in
trail for
huts.
bikes.
Right.
Cool. Okay.
Yeah, and this is you know, I'd say a large part, of the credit is owed to Senator Leahy, because he got a
Mhm.
earmark to fund a bunch of this. Which is, you know, a big critical part of it. It makes enough of the critical mass to then say, hey, this is possible, in other places. So, and there's a, you know, there's a, example with, the Long Trail already, so. Yeah. Pretty cool.
I hear they built a lot of trails up just north of Killington. Is that correct? And up
In Rochester?
Yeah, yeah, up in that
That's,
direction.
they're the genesis for all this.
Okay,
The guy that runs
Randolph.
Bellamont is Angus from Rochester.
okay.
Yeah.
Yep. And they're the ones that, like, we met with some, property owners last week down here we're trying to get down off the hill essentially. It's exciting.
Do you
Down
want us
off the
to,
hill, which side?
East Dorset, the mountain here to get
Mhm.
down to then get over to Emerald Lake State Park and then
So it has to go
over to
through
the-
private property.
it is gonna have to, yeah, it is gonna, but they have conservation, partners, they have, you know, there's a lot of, it's well thought out. It's
Mhm.
really,
is it gonna go over some Connors Lane?
um, there's the potential that all that's gonna be owned by the Forest Service.
Oh,
At some point, yeah.
okay.
That's why, there's a lot of resources being kind of flung around and the timing is very, very,
Really good for him.
very good for everybody.
Yeah.
It's like, it's pretty incredible.
Hmm.
So, and it's just, you know, somebody once told me, like, communities never regret, green space.
Mhm.
And I just think that's definitely true. Like,
Mhm.
just, oh,
Yep.
darn, you know, that park, geez, it's still so terrible, you know? So it's a good investment, and I think it just kind of builds on a bunch of the stuff we've already done, and that's what the letter says.
Do you need us to approve this letter?
You don't need to necessarily
Just
vote
fine.
on it, just if you say it's good.
Yep.
Yep.
There you go.
That's great.
Good.
I'm not sure I've ever seen your signature before.
That's it.
It's a good one.
Yeah, that is a good one.
Anything
Can't read
else?
it.
Did anyone else have anything they want to bring up?
Just in case, just be aware with the schools that, we've got a Taconic Greenhead is a December 3rd meeting. When we'll be discussing the sort of first draft proposal from the board asked the superintendent, based upon all the input, to come up with a
Yeah,
proposal.
I think
And then it'll be presented then.
what's good is at least you've already started this process, so now if and when the state comes up with something.
The state is coming up, the
Something's got,
legislatures isn't in
something's,
session and they're going nuts already.
yeah, so I would imagine something's coming down the pike, so at least we're talking about stuff.
Well, there's
already, so.
the Commission on the Future of Public Education in Vermont is the commission that was put together in the last legislative session. They're supposed to be providing on December 15th, just kind of give the time, on December 15th, they're supposed to, their first piece of work is to present the legislature with, here's some stuff you could do this year. And then the longer term stuff that they continue to operate for another year. But, before that, typically it's called the December 1st letter from the tax commissioner. That's where, the bizarre thing is, we went over, we had a meeting last night and the December 1st letter is supposed to be sort of tallying up what all the school budgets for the year are going to be from all the districts. And then present what that means for taxes. Nobody's ever we do not provide the tax commissioner or anybody else with those numbers because we're just starting our budgets. Our budgets aren't far enough, but before the December 1st letter, they supposedly have an indication of what all the schools are going to spend, even though they haven't,
Right.
they're just
Finalize their
in the
numbers.
earliest stages of building budgets, but December 1st, there will be a letter out, the tax letter, that'll probably be screaming bloody murder that it's gonna be another horrible year for taxes. And it could be. And then December 15th, the commission comes out with their, they've been meeting, comes out with, here's some ideas for the legislature to consider. Legislature's already going nuts in closed rooms behind the scenes, trying to throwing out any sort of ideas. So it's going to be a frenetic,
There's no,
everybody needs to do something.
there's no easy way to unwind it, so that's.
It's the structure of the system is screwed up,
Mhm.
and they're all operating on the basis of data that's not really accurate.
Hmm.
And there are a lot of ideas that are being recycled from many years ago. And, there are gonna be, changes are needed, but it's gonna be, I think, we should be ready for, there's gonna be just a lot
We
of,
just had a bit of a mandate on the vote, so.
Yeah, yeah.
So I would imagine there's gonna be stuff suggested, so I just think
Well, that's-
P&G is lucky that we're already talking about some of this stuff already, so maybe we're a little more fleet of foot, and maybe if there's, do this, but we'll give you that.
well, where, where we are too is, last year, again, we had the, our three districts, Taconic, Green, Meadowy, and Winhall. They had, increases in education spending of 3.5%, 1.5%, and negative. But overall, statewide, education spending went up by 10.7%, so our taxes went up by 10%. And that's, sort of a problem, and everybody needs to get religion about having their budgets be a little bit tighter, and I think that's part of what this is. But the system's so screwed up that, that nobody, it's, the incentives are all messed up and there's some good work being done on it, but it's gonna be really a mess. Once again, this year, just like last year was a sort of a horror story, all the stuff going on. It's gonna be that again.
All right, well, thanks for the warning.
Yeah.
I move we adjourn.
State, there's an increase of 10%.
10.7.